Welcome to Raising the Flipping Bar, the go-to podcast for aspiring and seasoned real estate investors. I'm your host, Derek Marlin, and I'm the CEO of Elevation. We're a real estate investment company based right here in Denver, Colorado. We'll dive into smart investment strategies, market insights, and essential tips for scaling your real estate ventures. Whether you're making your first investment or your 100th investment, this podcast is your blueprint for success in the ever-evolving world of real estate investing. Get ready to elevate your real estate game and begin your journey with me. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Raising the Flipping Bar. I'm your host, Derek Marlin, and I'm really excited because we've got a phenomenal guest who's a business owner, who's an investor, who's in the private and hard money lending space, and he's doing a lot of the same things that we're doing, and we've known of each other for a long time. But thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Kevin Amolsch with Pine Financial.
Derek, thank you so much for inviting me out to your beautiful office. The first time we've actually connected like this, and I think this is great, man. You got a great space here. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been fun. Well, I'm just pumped to have a person who's also got some podcast experience. So we should be able to go all over the place with this episode. One of the things I like to do is to give people some context is give me a fun fact, give me something different, something, it doesn't have to be crazy and like the craziest thing ever, but just something people are like, I never would have thought of that with Kevin. Give me a fun fact.
As a senior, so I could ride bulls.
Really?
So I was a bull rider in high school and went to the state finals for high school rodeo. Yeah.
And was that in Colorado?
It's Colorado. Yeah. It's very interesting because it was Stanley Lake High School up in Broomfield. But when you have like suburban type schools, they don't have enough bull riders in one school. So it was all of Jefferson County came together to make one team. So it was a Jeffco rodeo team.
Yeah.
Which made it very interesting because a lot of my friends then were not in my school, right? They went to other schools around the county.
That is cool. Okay, so the good thing is now we have a professional poker player. We've got people that were in special ops. We've got a bull rider. I mean, we've got some unique folks doing cool things. So love it. That's a great one. And I have a feeling I don't think anybody's going to top that one. So that's pretty good.
So special ops, that's pretty cool.
Oh, good dude. That'll be another connection I'll have to make offline. But the fun thing is we were officially kind of connected where I was fortunate enough, and thank you for having me as a guest on your podcast. The crazy thing is I can't believe we've never met before. I was looking at our LinkedIn and we have like 230 something connections.
That's amazing. I mean, you sent me that email the other day and said that, and I was like, holy cow, that is really true. But we're both in the same community, and the investor community, even nationally is rather small. And then you narrow that down to a city or, a metro area, it really does shrink it down. So I'm very surprised as well.
Yeah, no, this is great. And the other thing that I really enjoyed is we were able to get together and hang out and have a cold one. And obviously that was a great way to get to know one another. So I think it's going to make for a great podcast. So it's just super, super fun. So we're glad to have you on.
Dude, I'm excited.
Absolutely. So let's dive in. Okay. You've got over 20 years of real estate investing experience. The way I like to say it is instead of like, oh, well, tell me your story. To me, there always seems to be some highlights to your journey, some key points to your journey. Give us the highlight reel of kind of where you've come from, and we'll catch you up to today as well.
Well, I was reading books when I was in the Army and trying to figure out what to do with my money. I was saving a little bit of money because you don't spend a lot when you're in the military. They pay for everything, right? So I was like, where do I do with this little? It's small because they don't pay you very much, but what do I do with this savings? And so I started reading books, and I read that Purple Bible that we all know about. And then from there is real estate investing. So I bought my first house. I was just turning 21. And then like many of us, I moved out of it and kept it as a rental. I did the house hacking thing before house hacking. Like we were renting out rooms. I didn't have a mortgage payment because roommates were paying for it, and then kept it as a rental. And look, I was making money every month. It's like $400 a month, which is great on one little single family home back then. This is like 2001. I was seeing the appreciation, the tax benefits, the tenant paying my mortgage off for me, all the things that we learn about in real estate. I was like, I just fell in love, Derek. And it's like, this is going to be what I use to become wealthy. And I just really focused in on investing in real estate. And look, I was a broke college kid. I mean, in my refrigerator, I had no food. It was literally a keg of beer. That was all that was in the fridge. And so I had to figure it out, and I started buying a house, maybe 2 houses every single month. And I did it by using creative financing strategies. And so that's how I got my start.
Investing in the Denver metro market, which I think gives such great perspective, especially pre-crash. Most people, I barely got in kind of bottoming out part of the crash. So I would love to kind of dive deeper because this is going to be great information. So everybody listen up. Kevin's got great experience pre-crash, during crash, post-crash. Again, I got lucky in 2009 starting to buy rentals, but I would love to know kind of how are you focusing pre-crash, then we'll hit the crash and we'll kind of come current.
So my focus pre-crash was 100% building a rental portfolio. Now I would flip a house, wholesale a house, fix and flip a house here and there to generate income, cash flow. But for me, it was building wealth. And I don't think you could build wealth by staying on the treadmill. And what I mean by that is fixing and flipping is a fantastic business. It's very high paying, but it's a job. So I wanted something that was going to produce money for me without having to work so hard for it. So just reoccurring, right? So I was focused on building a rental portfolio. And the strategy that was really successful for me, Derek, was the lease option. I did a lot of subject twos as well, but the lease option is just such an easy strategy to get started with. Look, I understood it. Sellers understood it. My tenants and my resident buyers understood it. It's just a pretty simple concept to grasp. So it was easy for me to sell.
And actually, that'd be a great point for us to dive a little deeper. Can you give our audience a little bit of that 101 level of lease option versus the subject to? Because they've kind of come back around. They become sexy again because the market's harder, to look at. People have got cheap rates. Maybe give us a difference of those two different strategies.
It's the perfect time to be looking at this strategy, you guys, because you could lock in 30-year fixed rate loans that are 2 or 3 years into the amortization at sub 3% loans. Where else are you going to do that? But with this strategy, you could do it. These strategies. So the lease option is very simple. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a lease with an option to buy. So if you think of an option, that's a unilateral agreement which forces the seller to sell and gives you as a buyer the right to buy or not buy. So you have the option to buy it, right? Sometimes you have to pay a premium for that, but I never paid a premium for it. I just negotiated the lease with the option and sellers agreed to it. You got to find the right seller, right? And know how to negotiate. But it's a great strategy, especially going into the crash, because look, I had the option to buy, not the obligation. So as the world was crumbling in around us, I didn't have to exercise any of those options. So it's very safe. Now, it's a little weird because you don't own the house, right? So it's hard to sell a house you don't own. So you do have to figure out that exit strategy. On the subject to, you're actually taking title. So you own the property and then you just take over the payments.
Okay, gotcha. Well, and that leads us perfectly kind of into the '08 crash. You're a smart guy. We talked about you literally reading through mortgage-backed securities documents. I felt like you were Michael Burry on The Big Short. Tell us a little bit about kind of going through that, what it was like. You did a ton of rentals at the time. Yeah, kind of paint the picture of 2008 because not a lot of people saw that real time.
So real estate rental properties is very difficult to make a living. So I was trying to figure out how to increase cash flow. And one of the ways I did that is by taking a job in corporate America. And I worked downtown Denver in that big cash register building.
Oh, yeah.
And the business was called Clayton. It went public while I was working there. And Clayton, what they did was analyze mortgage bonds. Okay. So my client was Credit Suisse. Oh, yeah. But think about any of those big investment banks that purchased up mortgage securities. Your Lehman's, your Bear Stearns. So these were the buyers and these were our clients. So we analyzed those bonds. So I was sifting through individual loans, sifting through entire loan bond files. And these are billions of dollars each bond, each mortgage bond. And so I was doing that just to generate some income. But what I learned through that, Derek, is I can't work for somebody else. Yeah. It was just too difficult, man. It's like, do I have to ask to take a piss? Really? I started becoming a mortgage broker in 2006. And so I left the mortgage bond world, became a mortgage broker, and I continued to buy properties. And the mortgage broker thing, the person I chose to work with did private money. Okay. Her name was Susan, and Susan took me under her wing, and she was like my mentor. Yeah. She taught me so much about this business, taught me how to raise capital from private investors and how to loan that out to people like you, Derek, that are fixing and flipping. And so I started doing that in 2006. And then, as you know, 2007, interest rates were going up. Everyone was in adjustable rate loans. You had rents coming down, which was a very difficult situation for people who had rental properties. And then 2008, it just kind of fell apart. Bear Stearns goes out. Lehman Brothers files bankruptcy, which that shocked the world. And people in this business at that time got hurt. I don't know very many people that came out without a scar.
But if you don't have access to capital, you can't buy rentals, you can't flip properties. Maybe just dive into the liquidity thing, because I think that's something that people don't really get. Well, maybe talk a little bit about the liquidity crisis, because I think that's the other tough thing is that people think of, oh, there were tons of houses for sale, there were foreclosures. You're right, there's rents coming down. But if you don't have access to capital, you can't buy rentals, you can't flip properties. Maybe just dive into the liquidity thing, because I think that's something that people don't really get.
And I got to share with you guys, this is something that people don't get now.
True.
We're not that far away from where we were in 2009 and 10 right now. as far as liquidity goes. And the reason I say that is because the availability of credit, that's what creates the liquidity. So back before '08, there was just free money. I mean, you could borrow, we were talking about this over beers. You could borrow money, stated income, non-owner occupied loans, 100% loan to value. This is what I was borrowing.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, you have a 660 credit score and you qualify. Now my credit score was a little higher than that back then, but you're telling me a 660, which is pretty average credit, and you could borrow 100% without proving income. And so, yeah, people were just buying because the money was easy to get. Well, what does that do? That creates pressure, pricing pressure, because the demand is so high. So when you have a high demand for housing and limited supply, as we know, real estate's finite. So you have limited supply, high demand, that forces prices up. And that's what created the bubble, right? And then when the liquidity dried up, as you're referring to here, that's when the crash came. So all of a sudden banks are like, oh shit, we're in trouble. So let's stop lending, right? That's sort of what happened in COVID.
Yeah.
And so the credit got tight. You didn't have stated income loans. You had the SAFE Act, you had TILA, you had RESPA, all this stuff that was just tightening, making it tough for lenders. And that's really what created the crash.
Well, and that's well said. And I remember it kind of just from, let's call it being on the sidelines where I was in the corporate world. My wife and I were buying our first place. And I remember this was 2002, 2003. So a little precursor to what you just described. And we were freaking out because I had just gotten my first corporate job. She was looking and the mortgage broker was like, oh yeah, you guys can qualify for $400 all day. I'm like doing the simple math going, there's no way I'm going to be able to make that mortgage payment. We were freaking out. We ended up buying it, $200. And he said, to your point, no money down, let's do it. And I'm like, okay, I can scratch together at least 10%. And we were still able to make it out, even having to sell just because of a life event where we had our third daughter and moved into another property. But you're right, it was free money. There were so little guidelines, like it just was kind of the wild, wild west.
Yeah, and it's not really the money down, the no money down. You know what it was is the affordability, like you said. So think about this. If you look right now, Derek, at VA versus FHA. So FHA is 3.5% down payment requirement. VA, no down payment requirement. Which one has a higher default rate, do you think?
Ooh, good question. I'm going to go, you would think 0%. I mean, I would think 0% would be a higher default, but I'm going to go FHA.
Yeah, it's FHA. And the reason for that is debt to income. Right. The debt to income ratio is far lower on the VA because they know that you can't afford the payment. Right. And you have FHA debt to income, I think it's 45%. 45% of your income going towards your mortgage, and then you're surprised there's defaults? Come on.
Yeah. No, well said. I mean, isn't the kind of industry standard is you shouldn't be over, back in the day it was about a quarter. Now I feel like we've inched up to maybe a third of household income. So yeah, I mean, again, a lot of it's hindsight. We're all 2020. We're all armchair quarterbacks. But maybe that's another great question I'd love for you to ask is now you've got this experience. We're so far past that. Is there something that you would have loved to have looked back and said, oh man, I wish I could have seen this? Or what did you learn from being through kind of the craziness of those 3 or 4 years? Yeah, we'll move forward. I promise. We'll move forward. I promise.
No, this is fine. This is actually pretty fun. This will help your viewers and listeners. Yeah. One of the most important things that I learned in my career was the importance of like what you say to yourself and the goals that you set for yourself, and basically how you communicate with your own mind, which it's elusive. People don't quite grasp this, but I'll tell you what, if you're a high achiever, which I assume you are if you're listening to this, then goals are very important to you. And you set a goal and you're going to work like hell to hit that goal. I mean, that's what us high achievers do. So your goal is hyper important to your success. And so my story is, my goal was I want to do one deal every single month. I want to add one rental property to the portfolio every month. Seems reasonable. Yeah. That's a very results-oriented goal, which is not good, by the way. Your goal should be more action-focused. But that aside, now, if you think about that, I want to do one deal a month and I'm hyper-focused on the success of that goal. What does that mean? What does that open me up to potentially? Well, doing crappy deals. Yeah. So I ended up taking on deals I shouldn't take on only so I could hit my goal. Okay. And so then I built up this portfolio, and most of it was good, but there's a bit of it that wasn't, and that's basically what brought me down. Yeah. So The goals are super important.
I think that's really important for everybody listening, is you're right. We talk a lot about it. It's like, well, what is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And if it would have been to make, let's say you're right, X amount of dollars or to afford a certain lifestyle, you maybe could have, you're right, run the numbers instead of said, I need 12 this year. I need 8 really good ones. So again, it's all hindsight 2020, but I think that's super good information for our listeners. So thank you for sharing. Well, and to me, that's also a little bit of silver lining. So tell us how you got into kind of launching Pine Financial, and we can talk about where you're at now, because I think that's the perfect segue for us to actually talk about, yes, super challenging things going on, but to me, lots of times there's silver linings. So talk to us a little bit about how that got you into the private and the hard money space. And that's obviously what you're doing now, but that's a silver lining, maybe. Dealing with hard money lenders is the biggest headache real estate investors have. I thought that's just how hard money had to be until I met Backflip. Backflip is changing the lending game by actually making loans stress-free. And I know this firsthand because I personally use them for my own deals. Let me tell you, their free app makes real estate investing effortless. With just a few taps, I can apply for loans tailored exactly to my needs, whether it's low interest rates, high leverage, or even deferred payments. The best part, I can secure financing in less than 2 weeks, making it easier to scale my business and close more profitable deals. But it doesn't stop there. Backflip instantly provides all the data I need to estimate profits, including a curated list of high-quality comps, saving me hours of work. Unlike other lenders who disappear after funding, Backflip is a true partner for elevation. Their team is always just a call away and ready to answer any questions and offer support. With Backflip, you get the data and the cash you need to jump on good investments quickly and with confidence. Click the link in the show notes to download the free app. Now let's get back to the show.
Oh gosh, there's a lot to unpack here. And I'm going to say one thing quick, and then I'm going to try to dig into what you're asking me. The first thing is I had very much had a ready, fire, aim mentality. And I think that's what helped create success. So I'm not saying it's bad. Yeah. Especially early on, you have to take action or you're never going to be successful. Right. So I think that's a positive way to look at business at the beginning. But at some point, you got to start aiming. So you got to try to be a little bit more conservative. So I think what happened in 2008, what it did for me was create a really strong foundation. And now I'm very conservative, far more conservative than probably a lot of investors that haven't been through that.
Yeah, that's really well said. Well, and actually that's kind of where we've come out of too. We were doing rentals in 2009. We started flipping in 2014 and 15. It was really, really good. Fast forward to today, we've done almost 90 deals, whether it's our deals or our clients' deals, but we've lost our ass on 2 of them lately because we weren't as hyper-focused as we should. And so it's like, no, redo your underwriting, get back to basics, and hopefully set yourself up for success for whatever that next tier is that you're going for. So I think you couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah, every once in a while, you got to get kicked in the face to keep you grounded, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's well said. Well, so with Pine Financial, that's been your primary focus for over the last 16 years. Give us a little bit about kind of where you started and then tell us a little bit about where you are now too.
Yeah, so bringing us back to 2008, I was working with Susan, as I said, and she was my mentor. And what ended up happening is I really focused in on the residential side of lending, and she was sort of going to the commercial side. But she was also trying to create this education platform. She really liked teaching real estate more than doing real estate. I'm a trenches guy. I want to be out there doing deals. So we started to have some conflict. And as I was growing the profitable part of her business, we just started not connecting as well. So when everything started collapsing, she had rental properties too. So she was hyper stressed out. She decided to go a different direction. She wants to teach real estate nice and safe, warm, fuzzy, right? I'm still like, no, I'm doing deals, especially now. 2008, 9, 10, yes, let's do deals. So that's when we separated and I started Pine Financial. So I look back and I'm like, that was a very difficult time in my life, but thank God, because now I was able to create my own company. I didn't have I don't want to say toxic partner. That doesn't sound right, but maybe more of a toxic relationship. She's a great person. It just wasn't a great relationship. So this is far better for me.
Well, and when you're not aligned, that's hard. You can have the best intentions, but if it's not that alignment or people do diverge, it's kudos for you guys for going, you know what, this is just not the right time. Let's separate and go separate ways. So no, well done.
That's how we started Pine. And I started with one guy, Derek, with $100,000. He's like, okay, loan out my money for me. So I was like, okay, I got to go find a fix and flip. So I went to a realtor sales meeting. I don't know if you've been to one of those, but it's where the realtors get in front of the room and they start pitching their listings, right? I don't know why they still do that because everything's online now, but they still do that. And I was able to get up there in front of the room and say, hey, I've got $100,000. I want to invest in someone's fix and flip. And one of the realtors at that meeting came up to me after the meeting and said, I got a deal. It was a little condo. So that was the first deal. I charged 4% in origination fees. I gave John, that was his name. I gave John 2,000. I kept 2,000, and then John got all the interest. So John did very well. Yeah. But that was my first one, right? Wow. That $2,000, that changed everything. So then I really focused in on the private lending, and I just started raising money. And the feedback I got, Derek, early on was, there's no diversification. It's not liquid. I can't get my money out, all of these things, right? So I started a fund, and that was in 2009. So that's small investment amount. More people can get involved. It is liquid, and it's diversified over a lot of properties. So at that one move in my business, solved these three problems and really started to explode after that.
Well, and tell us a little bit about kind of where you are today. You've got a much bigger staff. You're in a bunch of different states. I'd love for people to kind of learn that journey in not a long amount of time. So that's been the cool thing to watch.
It's been interesting you say that, because I feel like I could be so much farther ahead, but I know I'm peeling back the curtain a little bit here, but I did go through a divorce during this time, and I just did not want to work. Like, it was devastating for me. So I took maybe 3 or 4 years where I was just like not caring. Yeah. And so that really slowed the growth of the company down. So 16 years in this month, we're 16, and we have 190 million in AUM, assets under management, and it's all in short-term value-add loans to real estate investors. Real estate investors is what I love. It's what I am. So that's where our focus is. We're 18 people on the team, and we loan in Colorado and Minnesota primarily, but we also do some business in Wisconsin and in Washington, D.C. So of those 4 markets, that's 96% of our total allocation on our portfolio. We have little deals here and there that we sprinkle in from people that we really want to do business with, but 96% of our business is in those 4 core markets.
Well, and I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts. We had a podcast episode, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months ago, called Building a Championship Culture, or a winning team, if you will. So I was fortunate enough to spend some time working for the Broncos, learned a ton from the sidelines from Coach Shanahan and Mr. Bolin, the owner at the time. What's kind of your biggest indicator of when to hire and when to grow? Because I know I'm slow. I'm apprehensive when it comes to this. You've built a great company. I'd love to hear kind of where you go. You know what? It's time to grow. I'm running out of time, whatever it is. What are those indicators for you?
I can tell you the first hire. So I don't know exactly who the listener is here, but if it's a newer investor, the first hire is always the scariest and the hardest. And it's always not too late, but you always look back and say, why didn't I do that earlier? So the first hire is going to be an administrative, likely. So I think what is highly important for successful leaders is to really understand the 80-20 rule. 80% of your income comes from 20% of the effort. So if you can narrow down what is in my 20% list and what is in my 80% list, and then focus on the 20%, which means you have to get rid of other things, right? You have to start checking things off the 80. The only way to do that is to delegate. So you need to hire people that can take over those tasks. To answer your question about when, dude, that's a question I don't know that can be answered, because it's very, very challenging. A lot of companies will say hire forward, which basically means you don't want your team to be over like 80% capacity, because that could burn them out. So as they start approaching 80% capacity, you hire again. The problem with that strategy is if you go through like what we have gone through recently, and now you're way overstaffed, and now we have layoffs, right? So you don't want to trim. So we sort of go the other way, and I want to see return on investment on my hires, which is very hard to calculate. And in each role is going to have a different ROI. Sure. But I like to get them to the capacity of 100, even a little higher than that, and then give them some support and then hire. So I think that's the conservative nature in me. But that's sort of the strategy we work. And I got to tell you, man, this is really hard. But if you could come up with like benchmarks, like after we hit revenue of this, after we hit whatever this, and narrow that down, and then you know exactly when to hire.
I think that's really well said. And I read an article, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and it's more from the private equity side, where they try to get a 3 to 5 times ROI on that person. So if that person is costing $100,000, their minimum benchmark is they need to be accountable, maybe more on the ops side of things, or production wise on the sales side of things, to bring in 300K. And ideally you want to get them to 500K, because what a lot of people don't realize is, let's keep the simple low end of that, equation. You're paying somebody $100,000. That's the base $100,000 that goes out the window. Then the other $100,000 is either for taxes or operations. And so you really don't profit as a business owner until you hit that third multiple. And then you're still busting your ass, working a ton and managing people. It's like, is that really worth it? That's, I think, why the private equity folks kind of shoot for that 5X. But that's something I thought, okay, that's kind of makes sense.
Yeah, on the upside, it's very hard to measure. But this makes sense because you think about workers' comp insurance, you think about your FICA tax and these things that don't show up on the pay stubs. A lot of times, a lot of the benefits don't show up. Your PTO, your desk that you sit at, your phone line, like all of these things add up.
Yeah. No, that's well said. Well, is there something that you do that you work, the way I like to say it is on your business, big picture stuff, strategy stuff versus in your business where you're in the trenches, rolling up your sleeves and you're doing the day to day? What's something you do to work on the business to grow?
Yeah, that's the 80-20. So I really do focus on the 80-20. But I'll tell you this, and I think this is something that I learned through COVID. Gosh, we got a lot out of COVID, didn't we? Yeah. We learned a lot.
No, you're right.
One of the things I learned was I need time, quiet time. So as a leader, you get hit up constantly. So I have an open door policy. In fact, I sit on the floor. So, my executive team, they all have their little private offices and they close the door and I'm out on the floor with the team.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So I get hit up constantly. It makes it very hard to accomplish things at times. Yeah. So I take one day a week where I work at home and I don't answer phone calls. I turn off my email and I just focus on working. And something else I've learned, you really do need focused time. Like you as a leader, your most valuable asset to the company is your time to think.
Right.
If you can dedicate 3 or 4 hours, they say 3 to 4 hours a month, but it has to be highly focused, dedicated time. So for me, I love the mountains. So I want to be no headphones, no distractions, going for 2 or 3 hour hikes where I'm just focused on Pine Financial and what can I do to improve. And then you just kind of create tasks, right? This is the task that's going to help move the company forward. Boom, let's work on that.
Well, and that's really well said. And I don't know if you kind of feel this way, but for us, we try to also focus on where's your energy coming from and where's the output. And whether you're a morning person or an afternoon or a night owl or whatever, I realized it's probably from when our son was born and I just stopped sleeping, or graduate school, but like I became a morning person. And so my best production time is actually 5 a.m. till 8 a.m. And so it's still nice to hopefully get a workout in or do whatever. But I realized that, to your point, uninterrupted time from 5 to 8, I feel like I can get a day's worth of work done before the day even starts. So it's like, I kind of stole this from a couple different other successful people of work from 5 to 8, then maybe go get a workout in and then come into the office at 10 or 10:30. And people are probably going, well, what the hell are you doing? You're coming in at 10:30. But you've already cranked out so much stuff uninterrupted. Maybe people are night owls. I don't know. Do you have a time of day that's like better for your energy and you feel like you're more productive?
Mine's morning too. And I got to say that I feel very strongly that successful people have solid morning routines. So it sounds like you do too. Every successful person I know has a routine they do. And typically involves working on your physical body and your mental. You got to strengthen your mind too. So meditation, reading, whatever it is, something like that, I think is pretty essential.
Okay, everybody. So I'm having such a great conversation with Kevin. We're actually going to have a second episode. So definitely tune in, come back. We'll have that ready for you guys next week, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Raising the Flipping Bar. If you found value in our insights and stories, let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on social media and be sure to share this episode with friends or colleagues who might benefit. Your feedback and reviews help us grow and reach more listeners like you. So please, if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. Thanks again to the Elevation Academy for sponsoring today's show. If you're interested in learning more, click the link in the show notes below. And remember, every property tells a story, every deal brings a lesson. Keep reaching for those goals, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening and watching Raising the Flipping Bar. Just a basic overall disclaimer is that A, this is not legal advice. B, this is not tax advice. C, this is not financial advice. I hope you get the gist, but I'm obviously not a lawyer, not a CPA. Hell, I'm not even a real estate agent, actually. But in general, we hope you get a ton of value out of this, but there is a bit of a disclaimer. Please consult a professional if you have any questions whatsoever. Thanks.